Fresh Boy Production.
What is going on, everybody? This is Coach Coleman, Jesse Coleman, and you're checking into Breakthrough Blueprint, the podcast, where we help you tap into your full potential. And this week episode, we have another solo episode, and there's two directions I want to go with this episode. Well, before I get into that, I just want to highlight last week what was a great. It was a great time, right? We had we had a conference down in San Antonio. That was my first time down in San Antonio. The weather was ridiculous, like it was crazy. And I'm already like a hot person, so like I was sweating just from walking. Like it was crazy, but it was a good time. And there's something I want to talk about from that. So actually, I got three things I want to hit on. So the first thing is that down there we had our event or whatever the case may be, and it was something I realized that there's going to be situations in your life where people are going to look at you in a different light than they look at other people, right? They're going to expect things from you that they don't expect from other people. They're going to depend on you in certain ways that they don't depend on other people, right? And for me, there was multiple situations that happened where there were people that was dependent on me in a leadership capacity, a friend capacity, so forth and so forth, that I didn't show up the way that they would have liked me to show up. And it kind of frustrated me where I'm like, damn, like I got everybody mad at me because I didn't respond a certain way, I didn't show up a certain way, or I didn't do certain things. And one thing I had to realize, and I'm starting to accept it, is that you know sometimes you are a person that people look to for certain things, and I don't want to use the word expect because it's going to sound bad when what I'm talking about isn't bad, but they again, they just look towards you in a certain way to respond a certain way, or show up a certain way, and then we don't do that, you could potentially hurt feelings or you could make people mad. So there's a few situations that happened like that, and it was crazy because a lot of the situations happened in the same day, and I'm like, damn, like all this is just falling on me right now. And I kind of, I don't want to say shut down, but I'm like, okay, I'm not going to worry about it. I'm not going to deal with any of these things. I'm just going to, keep going about the event. But I say all that to say that we have to realize that depending on, roles we take or positions we take, not only in business, but in our families and our friends group, there may be a time where you are the go-to person for some people, and you have to accept that, and you have to be cool with that and know there's things that come with it. And for me, I accept that. Like, I am one of those people that I want people to know they can come to me. I want people to know that I have their back, I'm in their corner. So it's a situation of just accepting that and being okay with that, and knowing that there's going to be people that look for me to show up in certain ways, and it's going to be the same thing with you. So you're going to have people that's going to look to you to show up in a certain way, and it's just having that open communication. I think that's one of the big problems of not having communication, to be able to articulate your feelings and they are able to articulate their feelings, where lines get crossed, signals get crossed, and you know it just doesn't work out. So that's a big part. So that was something I wanted to talk about, and then transitioning on to the next part of things that I want to talk about is there's a season of change going on right now, y'all. And I'm not just talking about business related, yes, business, but people's personal lives, um, friendship dynamics, relationship dynamics, going back to the business dynamics. And one thing we have to think about, change isn't bad. And let me say this, like when I say change, there's some people that have opportunities that's falling on their lap. There's some people that have the chance to go do certain things and things, things like that. So I don't want people to think this just is a bad thing, but there's some people that have to make changes in certain areas of their life, whether it's health, whether it's relationships, where it's jobs, whatever the case may be. And when we're thinking about change, when we're thinking about opportunities, we have to weigh the pros and cons on things, right? We can't rush into things. We have to really kind of like slow burn it to make sure that we are doing what we want to do. So if you're one of those people that's dealing with opportunities or changes that you need to make or you want to make, give yourself time to think about that. So what does that look like, right? Weighing out the pros and cons of the situations. What is the pros and cons of not making that change? What are the pros and cons to making that change? And then when you list those things out, I want you to make sure that you're being honest about things. You can't sugarcoat it. Like you have to be honest about what are the pros and cons of the situations that you're the opportunities that's presenting themselves. And then that's one way you can weigh it. Another part to that is, does the opportunities fall in line with your beliefs? Does those opportunities uh, fall in line on the path to the goal you have set? Like a lot of these things have to make sense for you when you're making these decisions. And then, I'm kind of really talking more on the business side right now of, weighing your options. Like you can do the pros and cons of business and personal. And then also, if we're being honest, hell, we could do the same thing for personal too, not just business. Like pros and cons. Like, hey, if I stay in this situation, if I continue to do these things, what are the pros and cons for me doing that? If I decide to change my lifestyle as far as being more a healthy person, what are the pros and cons to me doing that? Right? And then it's looking at the picture again of, okay, what are my goals? What are my beliefs? What are my values? Do either one of these directions, do they align with my beliefs or my values? So you want to look at that. And then I want to take that second part of change opportunities, and I'm going to pile it on to the third part I wanted to talk about. And that third part that I want to talk about is also just, how do you plan to do these things? What does that look like? What is the process you're going to use? And for me, in one of the classes that I teach, QL, Quantum Leap, we talk about brain dumping. We talk about brain dumping your to-do list and then breaking it down to your success list, right? And it came from the book The One Thing. So when I tell people, like, put it out there, write it down, and you're gonna start being able to see things in a different light. And one way I like to frame it is, think of a puzzle, right? When you have a puzzle, all the pieces are in the bag. And you guys probably heard this on the pod if you've listened to some episodes a while back, where if you have a bag of puzzle pieces, you are not able to put that puzzle together because they're all in the bag together, right? So what do? You put all the pieces on the table, and now you're able to start piecing the puzzle together. And at the end of it, you have a beautiful picture that you piece together. And that's the same thing for us when we're making decisions or when we're putting together our task list of things we got to do, or if we're feeling overwhelmed. I know a lot of my friends, a lot of people I talk to, they deal with anxiety. I deal with it too. We feel overwhelmed when we have so much on our plate. And what happens is, when we keep those thoughts in our mind, that's what causes us to be overwhelmed. That's what causes that anxiety, because the shit just running wild. Now, if we lay the pieces of the puzzle out, I take a piece of paper and I just write down everything that's in my mind. Now I'm able to look at it. Now I have that bird's eye view. I have the helicopter view of the situation. And I'm like, okay, this is what's important. This is not important. Hey, this can wait. This has to be number one priority. So take that back to when we talked about you weighing out the opportunity, the pros and cons. So not only are you writing out the pros and cons, you're just brain dumping everything around all those situations to be able to put the pieces of the puzzle together. And if we're going down the realm of business, a lot of us that are entrepreneurs, that are business owners, or even people that work in the corporate world, that you have all these thoughts, you have all these ideas, and one, you're going to probably forget about it because shit happens, life happens, and things come up and we forget about it. Or two, we get overwhelmed because we just got all this stuff in our mind, all this stuff to think about, and we do ourselves more harm than any good when we're just constantly thinking about those things. So that's why we write it down. Like, you just write it down, write everything down, brain dump it down, brain dump the pros and cons, brain dump the thoughts, brain dump the ideas, brain dump the questions you may have. And then you can start piecing those things together to start coming with a logical answer. That's the key word. That helps us come from logic as opposed to emotions. And take this from a person who's dealt with responding to shit in an emotional way and not a logical way. And then when I go back and think about it in a logical way, I realize that I dropped the ball, or I realized I didn't do something right because I thought of it and from emotion and not logic. So when we're brain dumping, when we're writing these things down, we're able to look at it from a logical view, and we're able to make a logical decision. So again, we're brain dumping, we're getting this stuff out. And it goes back to when we talk about it on the pod so many times when we talk about journaling. It's kind of the same way when you're in a shitty mood and you need to get those thoughts out. You start journaling, you just write everything down, you brain dump it, it makes you feel better. It's the same thing when we're having to make a decision. It's the same thing when we're having to choose if there's a change that need to be made or if we're on the right path. And the only thing you can do for that is to get a clear vision of what that looks like. So we're writing it down, pros and cons, brain dumping all the thoughts, getting it out of our mind. Because we have stuff in our mind about business or relationships that we need to fix. And then we think about we got to wash the dishes or we got to do the laundry or damn it, I got to go get gas because I forgot to get gas. Or school's starting back. Do the kids have everything they need for school? Like all that. So when you start thinking about it, you are complicating it. You are making it harder for yourself to think about the stuff that you need to think about at that moment because you're going to have things that pop up in your mind that doesn't even matter at that time. So we're brain dumping, we're writing it down. What's important, what's not important? What are the pros and cons? What are the questions I have for this? What do I need more clarity around to be able to make the decision I want to make and to be able to move in the direction I want to move? So again, going back to the beginning, the three things that I wanted to talk about is first thing, there's going to be a time where you're going to be in a position where you have to be okay with people are going to look to you in a certain way than they look to other people. They're going to look to you for guidance, help, you know, relationship, whatever that is. And you have to be okay with that. And you have to know that, hey, people are going to be a little bit more sensitive to the way I respond to them or to the way I show up than they will be to other people because they look at me in a certain way. Second part is that again, we are in the season of change. We're in the season of growth where making sure you are putting yourself in a position to make a logical decision and not moving off of emotions. So you're listening to pros and cons. You're making sure these things, does this align with my goals? Does this align with my beliefs? Right. And then the third part of that actually is combined with the second part is getting all this stuff out, getting the puzzle pieces out of the bag, putting it on the table, and able to piece life together, able to piece what your future looks like together. And then hell, That even helps you in a situation when you're putting the pieces of the puzzle together and you realize that the manufacturers messed up and they left out a piece of the puzzle. So now at least you are able to pinpoint the piece of the puzzle that is missing, and now you're able to do what you need to do, or reach out to the manufacturer, call the brand or whatever the case may be to get that piece of the puzzle. That's the same way for us. We're able to put the pieces we're able to lay it out, put the puzzle together, and we're able to realize, like, damn, there's a piece missing. So what does that look like? That may look like, if you are on a health journey, you realize that the piece of the puzzle that's missing is a nutritionist or a personal trainer, or you not drinking enough water, or you not getting enough protein. That's the piece of the puzzle that's missing. But if you don't lay out the pieces and you're not able to see that that piece is missing, then you're just going to be, BSing around. The same thing for business. That piece of the puzzle may be a coach, it may be a mentor, it may be an accountability partner. It may be any of these things that you don't realize because you have all the puzzle pieces still in the bag and you're not able to make a logical decision or be able to think logically because you have all this shit piled up in your head, right? So again, this was a short episode. I wanted to get right to the point. I didn't want to, drag this on for a long episode when those are the three things I really wanted to touch on. So again, first thing, realizing if you are a person that people depend on, look up to, or they 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 look for you for guidance, that you have to show up a certain way. Second part is, if you have a decision to make, again, we're in a season of growth. If there's some changes that need to be made, you have to list out the pros and cons, have your vision, have your beliefs, have your goals already figured out to see if these things align with that. And then the third thing is brain dumping. Put everything out there, get the pieces of the puzzle out of the bag, your mind, put them on the table, writing everything out, and start piecing it together. So again, this is your boy, Coach Coleman, Jesse Coleman. Thank you for rocking with me. Thank you for checking into, another episode of Breakthrough Blueprint, the podcast where we help you tap into your full potential. And I'll see you all next week. Peace.